Good morning. This is Megan from Not an Autism Mom, and I'm just going to wait until I see a couple of comments to see if anybody pops up. I am just here to talk to Virginia families and hopefully Virginia legislators about the updates to parents as paid providers. The first couple minutes, I'm just going to do a rundown for those of you who are in a rush or just wanting to get the gist of everything. And then after, I'll dive into more details about what's happening and why it's happening and what we can do about it. So just to start out, just a couple of things. Spouses being paid as providers is also a part of this, but I tend to stay in my own lane because I don't know much about how that advocacy went and what the issues are there. So I'll just be addressing the parents as paid providers, but I'm guessing that most of it is the same. Also, I will not be using negative or positive terms. I'll just be talking neutrally about our children because we shouldn't have to humiliate or degrade them in order to get services for them. So when you hear me talking about the services they need, that's neither a positive or negative thing. So I just want to start by saying that they deserve services that they need. So historically in Virginia, parents have not been able to be paid as providers for their disabled children. So you would have to get somebody from an agency, or you would do community. You would be able to hire your own people through community-based services. And during the pandemic, Virginia removed that restriction. So, and that's because, staffing, you couldn't have a lot of people coming in your house. You couldn't find anybody to come in your house. So they removed that restriction. And what happened is that Virginia families benefited from this so much. Parents who historically couldn't work even with an attendant were able to join the workforce as paid providers. They were able to have more options for their children. If they didn't want to send them to a certain type of program, they were able to have more options at home. The risk for abuse was lessened. And I mean, just overall, it was a positive experience for Virginia families. And over the pandemic, a lot of us came to our legislators and said, hey, we want to make this permanent because of all of those reasons. And we'll get into the reasons a little bit later on in this live. But what happened is, so the legislators, they heard us, they listened, and they decided to make it a permanent allowance for parents to be paid as providers. And so we're very grateful for that. And we're grateful to the ARC and to Moms in Motions and to the Autism Societies and all of the organizers who helped us make that possible. But what they did when they wrote it into the budget is they said pending CMS regulations. So CMS was going to have DMAS, CMS was going to have to come back with regulations on how are they going to make this happen permanently, which it has already happened. So I don't understand why they needed additional regulations. But that's what they did. And CMS has come back with proposed regulations. And you can read that here. I'm going to put that in the comment section. If you want to read along or if you want to see them, this is, I hope everybody can see that. These are the proposed regulations for parents as paid providers, and that will go into effect. I'm a little cloudy on the timeline. I know that the allowance runs out in November. If CMS did not come back, if they didn't make a decision, it would be, oh, thank you, Stephanie. Hi, you're the first person to comment. So hi, good morning. So those are the proposed regulations, and we're going to go over those now after I finish what you should do. Um, and to be quite frank, they're disrespectful regulations. They're fear mongering regulations, and they basically insinuate that parents are going to do a lot of Medicaid fraud from this. That's basically what it is. I mean, they are they're disrespectful regulations, honestly. So we're going to go into all of that, but what I want you to know, if you don't have time to watch this entire live, is that there's a town hall. It's a virtual town hall that's open until March 29th, I believe. And I'm going to put the link for that in the comments as well. And parents, advocates, anyone who is in Virginia, I would like for you to go there and at least make a comment saying that these restrictions are unreasonable and that there are already safeguards in place for Medicaid fraud. There are so many safeguards in place already, so that Medicaid fraud is it's a moot issue, and nobody's getting rich off of these off of attendant care hours. I mean, it's very low pay, but it's better than nothing. So go to the town hall and also let your legislator know what's happening, because our legislators approved this. Our legislators heard us. Our legislators said, yes, this is good for Virginia families and we want to make this permanent. And now CMS is coming after the legislative session is over, is coming around to kind of put these regulations in, and our legislators are home now, I believe, or they're going to be home soon. They're not paying attention. So go to the town hall, make a public comment, and also let your legislator know what's happening. And I will be working on a template for you today, and I'll have it up in the comment section a little bit later for you to educate your legislator on the benefits of having parents as paid as providers, and on how these proposed regulations would be detrimental to the action that they approved. I mean, they did this, they made it happen, they made it permanent, and now it's coming back and it's not actually going to be as beneficial as they thought it would be. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can just walk through each of these proposals and you can see for yourself. Here we go. I'm going to pull it up on my end as well so I can highlight. All right, so this is CMS's fact sheet. I'm not even sure why they call it that, but this is the proposals, and this is what the legislators put into the budget. Basically, contingent upon approval of CMS, which is Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Department of Medical Assistance Services, DMAS, shall allow legally responsible individuals, parents for kids under 18, and spouses to provide personal care, personal assistance services, and be paid for those services when circumstances prevent an individual from being cared for by a non-parent caregiver. Any legally responsible individual who is paid as an aide or attendant for personal care assistance services shall meet all of the same requirements as other aides or attendants. The department shall have the authority to implement these changes effectively July 1st. It should say 2023. It says 2022, and prior to completion of any regulatory process. And these bullets kind of lay out what has been happening so far. So Virginia's Appendix K, was the allowance for parents as being paid as providers during the pandemic. Say that 3 times fast. It just kind of lays out that if a parent wanted to be paid as a provider, they would just follow the same guidelines as other attendants. So anybody else that was an attendant, they would just follow the same guidelines, which are, they have to go through a background check. They have to go through They have to fill out the application. I mean, they have a lot of paperwork to do. They send their names through the systems to see if there's any like felonies or whatever. I don't know exactly what the requirements are, but to be an attendant for someone, you have to go through those no matter what. And then it says CMS approval is required to make the flexibility permanent and requires the state to develop program requirements. And these are the proposed program requirements. I'm going to pull them up. And we're going to go through it one by one. So buckle up if you're going to stay with me. Feel free to comment. I think I can see the comments. I've only seen one comment so far. So if I'm not seeing the comments, I probably should turn this on my phone just to make sure. That way I can see them. All right. Got it. Okay, so let's go into the first piece of this. Let me turn the volume off of my phone. So how does the state distinguish extraordinary care from ordinary care and state any limitations of the circumstances under which payment will be authorized? This says extraordinary care is care above and beyond what the parent spouse is obligated to provide. There must be objective written documentation that demonstrates there are no service provider alternatives presented at the time of service. The rationale for this is that CMS requires that care be provided by a legally responsible individual be care that is above what they would be obligated to do as the parent. So let's just break that down. That means that this is just redundant. Okay, so that means that they're putting in here something that has already been established. So in order for a child to receive attendant care, they either have to apply for a waiver, which is not easy to get. Personally, my family has been denied 5 times for the CCC Plus waiver, and I have a non-speaking child. So these waivers are not easy to get. And if you don't have a waiver for attendant care, you can get it through EPSDT. And I cannot, for the life of me, remember what that stands for. But basically, this is a redundant part, and it shouldn't even be in the proposal, because if a child is receiving attendant care, it has already been established that their needs go above and beyond what a parent would ordinarily provide to care for the child, right? So that means that they have a disability, they need extra help, and that has already been established. So that needs to be taken out. We'll go to the second one. I'm going to pull this up a little bit so you can see it. Limitations on the amount of services for which payment will be made. Reimbursement can be made up to 40 hours per week. CMS has cited this as a potential safeguard for legally responsible individuals serving as paid caregivers. Respite is not available when the legally responsible individual is the reimbursed caregiver, as respite is for the unpaid primary caregiver. Now, these are two different things, and we're going to break it down. What do they call it? Their rationale for this is that CMS has cited 40 hours a week as a potential safeguard. Research of other states revealed that this limit is common. So basically, they are saying that if the parent is paid as the provider, they're going to put a 40-hour limit on the parent being paid. Now, many of our children are given well above 40 hours for attendant care because they need round-the-clock care. And so this means that if a parent is being paid as a provider, if there's nobody else that can help, they are basically taking away the hours from the child for fear of some type of Medicaid fraud that we're not sure of. It is already determined that the child needs however many hours. That has already been determined. That is not up to them to say whether that's true or false. It's already been determined. Now, if they want the parent to be paid as the provider, they're only going to allow that child to have 40 hours. There's a word for that that I can't think of, but negligent comes to mind. I don't know what the word is. But this is basically saying we're going to take the child's hours away if the parent wants to be the provider. Let's see. Let me go back to that. Where is it? Here we go. And then respite is defined as services for the relief of the unpaid primary caregiver. In this case, the primary caregiver would be paid. Additionally, based on the demonstration that there are no alternatives, there would be no one available to provide respite. So what this is saying is that basically parents, in order for parents to be paid as providers moving forward, they would have to prove that there was nobody else that could come in and care for the child. This is not why our legislators made this permanent. This is not why our legislators made it permanent. Yes, it is hard to find somebody, but allowing the parent to be paid as a primary caregiver reduces the risk of abuse. That's one. And that is absolutely the most important one. When you are hiring low paid people to come in your home and care for someone who oftentimes cannot speak, who oftentimes cannot tell anybody what's wrong or that somebody has hurt them or anything, who oftentimes cannot feed themselves, cannot care for themselves, and you are bringing a low wage employee into the home to care for that child, the risk of abuse is extremely high. I do not have the data. I'm not the data person. I'm never going to be the data person. I'm sure that there's plenty of data that you can find. I know that Jules put a lot of data in our book about the abuse of disabled children and adults. That's number one of why the legislators were like, well, this really makes sense. Number two on this is that the parent is oftentimes still has to be at the home, right? First of all, there's risk of abuse to the child. Second of all, even if a parent has a paid caregiver, that doesn't mean that the parent will not be called several times to help. So the parents are often not able to work anyway. Oftentimes, our families have more than one child who needs services. So maybe they have a care attendant there for one of them, and maybe the other one called out that day for the other child. Parents of disabled children in Virginia, I mean everywhere, but we're talking about in Virginia, it is almost impossible to work a full-time job. And that's just facts. Unless you have, I don't know, I don't even know any circumstance where you can have a full-time job. Maybe if you're working at home, but you're still, I mean, you're working flexible hours and you don't have to do it like you don't have to be on your computer all the time. It's care work, right? It's hard work. Our children deserve this type of care. But having the parent is already doing the work of a paid caregiver. They're already doing that. Now you're just paying them for the work that they're already providing. That allows the parent to enter the workforce. It allows the parent to be paid for the work that they're doing already. And it reduces abuse for our children. I mean, these are just basic things. And so these jabs that they're taking at parents, saying that they can only be paid 40 hours a week, that hurts the child. That hurts the entire family. to have that as a potential safeguard. And what they're talking about is Medicaid fraud. And there are already so many safeguards in place for everyone, for anyone who is working with children. Stephanie, you said absolutely. We dropped respite after my non-speaking child was mistreated and left blistered and raw from sitting in a soiled diaper for nearly 2 hours. We dropped respite entirely at that point. Obviously, this is my unique experience. This type of experience is so common. And I think that the more we share these experiences with legislators, with the, I'm using my air quotes, general public, the more they'll understand of how much risk there is when you have somebody coming into the home and you have a child who cannot care for themselves, who cannot speak up for themselves, cannot advocate for themselves. So having the option for the parent to be paid as the provider is best for everyone. And when it comes to Medicaid fraud, with my air quotes, I don't even want to hear it. Like, prove it. Seriously, prove it. It's hard enough to even get the hours that you've been allotted, right? That your child has been allotted. It's hard enough to get those hours, period. There's already restrictions on if somebody is clocked in after 12 o'clock at night, those hours don't count. If someone tries to say they worked 75 hours and your child is only allotted 40, guess what? I can't do the math, but like something about 35 of those hours are not paid. You did that volunteer. They're not going to give you more hours than your child is allotted. So there really is no risk of that type of Medicaid fraud. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Oh, the respite. Okay, here we go. I do want to touch on this. Respite is defined as services for the relief of the unpaid primary caregiver. In this case, the primary caregiver would be paid. So that makes sense, right? That makes sense. You can't give respite hours if you're not getting any respite. So that kind of makes sense. However, respite is not for the primary caregiver. Respite is for the child, because when people are tired, when people are working too much, that raises the risk for abuse. Based on the demonstration that there are no alternatives, right? They're already saying that you have to provide justification. That's in the next one. They kind of go a little bit backwards on this. So you have to prove that there's nobody else that can care for your child. And we're going to go into that. But respite hours is way different from full-time care. Okay, so if the parent is being paid as the provider, that means that you can't find anybody else. That's not exactly true, right? We might be able to find somebody to be paid for respite hours because it's not full-time work. It's an evening, it's a weekend, it's sporadic hours that somebody can say, yes, I can do this on this day, I can do this on this weekend. It's completely different from a full-time position where somebody is coming into the house every single day. So let's go down to that second. Let's go down to this last one, because this is really huge. How is it established? Let me pull it up. How is it established that the service provided by the legally responsible individual is in the best interest of the participant? There must be objective written documentation presented at the time of the service authorization that there are no other viable service provider alternatives. Providing justification at the point of service authorization allows a level of assurance that all options have been explored and that reimbursing the parent spouse is the best option for the member. Otherwise, funds would have to be retracted upon post-payment review if the documentation is not sufficient. Basically, this is saying that if it turns out that you could have had somebody else come into the house and you were paid as the provider, they're going to make you pay them back. That's what that's saying. That's what that is threatening to the parents. Also, it's saying that you have to prove nobody else is available, that you've exhausted all other options. Do you know what that means for parents? Parents are going to have to, and it's already starting. I've already heard from one of my parents that is in Central Virginia that she's having to put out ads on care.com. She's having to put out ads on Facebook. She's having to turn in all of this stuff to prove that she has exhausted every other option before she can be approved as a paid provider. This is so disrespectful in my opinion. It's demeaning also. Some people will say like, come walk a day in our shoes and you'll understand, but it's not just that. It's that it's already established that our children need more care than what is typical of a child, right? It's already been established. And that child needs additional care for however many hours. That child needs care that is beyond what is a typical child would get. They deserve that care. They also deserve a person who is not going to abuse them. They deserve a person who is invested in them. They deserve they deserve a person that knows them and that is not just somebody that came in from an agency one day and then a week later they have another person. They deserve continuous care. Continuity of care is so important. And parents are providing that now. For now, they're being paid for that, which is fabulous because our legislators have allowed that. And they should be given that continuity of care, of quality care, of invested care moving forward. I don't know how else to say it, but the restrictions that they are giving are not in the best interest of the child. It is apparent that they don't really care about the child in this instance. All they care about is restricting the parents for whatever reason. I'm not honestly it the reason eludes me because these are Virginia families. These are our families in Virginia, right? So why are you going to try to make it as hard for them as possible? I really don't understand it. This also, if things could not get any worse, they can. They are taking away, if you want to be paid as a provider, this section, I'm not going to read the entire thing. But this section says that basically, if you want to be paid as providers, you have to move to agency directed care. So there is no more consumer directed for parents who are paid as providers. And then there are extra, let's see, I'm going to go to this part. And then there are extra requirements for parents to be in here, like extra training, extra monitoring, more monitoring and more training than a typical care attendant would be required to have. So basically, if you want to be the provider, you have to move to agency care, and under that agency, you're going to have more training than the other staff at the agency. It's ridiculous. Parents know that when they hire other people to come into the home, parents already know this. The parents are training the staff member. The agency is not training the staff member because the agency doesn't really know the child's needs. Um, the agency doesn't know anything, right? They are just the agency that provides staffing. So when no matter if a attendant comes to the home from an agency or consumer directed, the parent is the one doing the training. So requiring parents to have more training from an agency it is flat out ridiculous. So, um I believe this already happens. The license agency will have the responsibility of quarterly in-person monitoring. Um, and DMAS will conduct quality reviews for additional oversight. I mean, they're just basically saying that parents are crooks and they're trying to get rich off of this. This is a low-paying job, which makes it harder to get quality applicants, which makes it harder to get quality care, which makes it harder to get continuous care for children who need that continuity of care. So, like, nobody is getting rich. Nobody is coming up off of a low paying job, right? But it does help families who are unable to find that continuous care, who are unable to find quality applicants, who are unable to join the workforce even though they have an attendant in the house. So basically, the point of all of this is our legislators heard us and they decided to make this a permanent allowance for parents and spouses to be paid as care attendants. There is already a very rigorous, what do you call it, application for these for getting a attendant care. You either have to be approved for a waiver, which is not easy. We are still not approved for a waiver, even with a non-speaking almost 10-year-old who has many needs. We still have not been approved for any waivers. So that's how hard it is to even get approved for a waiver. So if you don't get approved through a waiver, then you have to go through EPSDT, and the doctor, your child's doctor, has to say these are their needs. These are how many hours they should be provided with from the doctor who knows them better than anybody at the state whatever DMAS or CMS. So you have to turn that in and use a service facilitator, and then they come back and they reduce the hours. The state will say, "Oh no, we're just going to give them this many hours." So they're already a rigorous requirements just to get attendant care, right? Just to be approved for these hours. So nobody is gaming the system in that way. It's impossible to even get hours that aren't deserved. That children that It's impossible to get hours if children don't actually need the hours. So there's no fraud on that end. Our legislators decided that it was good for families to have this allowance. Families have been telling their legislators for the past 2 years how much they have benefited from this allowance as being able to be paid as their child's caregiver. It is a low paying job, but it's giving parents options because they're able to earn some income that they weren't able to earn before. Because most parents are not able to enter the workforce even if they have attendant care. Because it's a low paying job, because there's not continuity of care, because it's hard to keep people. It's hard to have quality people. Just like Stephanie said, her child was abused, right? Neglected. So having peace of mind to be in the home, to be paid for the work that you're already doing, and to ensure that your child has quality care, right? That's like, who better, right? We're already doing it. We are invested in the health and well-being and happiness of our children. So who better to provide care for them? And then CMS comes with this bullshit. That's all it is. CMS comes with this bullshit and says, oh, well, we're going to put as many obstacles in place for these families as possible, as if there aren't enough barriers, as if there aren't enough hurdles to jump through just to get the attendant care in the first place. We're going to put extra requirements on them because we feel like they're trying to game the system. There is no system to game. This is a low-paying job. So even if I were to, I don't know, good gosh, I don't even know how you would do Medicaid fraud. I mean, you really have to do some mental acrobatics for this, but whatever. Let's just like, even if they did say they were doing the hours without being there, which doesn't even make sense because they're the parent, even if they were able to like find a way to do Medicaid fraud and bill for the hours when they weren't there, they're still only getting the hours that the child was allotted in the first place. It's just a non-starter. It's a non-starter. So anyway, I will be preparing a template for you all to send to your legislators to let them know about this. It will be short, but it will educate them on what's happening. What has happened in the past. A lot of our legislators are new this year, so they don't know like what was happening before. And quite frankly, legislators, they only know like what people tell them. So if nobody is talking to them about disability services, if nobody is educating them on how helpful this allowance has been, if nobody's educating them on how detrimental these restrictions will be, then it will just stay like this, right? They can't act on what they don't know about because most of them don't know. But they need to know that a lot of their constituents have disabled children. A lot of their constituents have disabled spouses. And we all vote. We all vote. And so we want our legislators to speak up for us. We want our legislators to act on our behalves. And this is the time right now, because if it's not done by the end of the month, these restrictions will stay in place. If you're on consumer directed care, you will have to switch to agency directed care if you want to be paid as a provider. That's one thing that will happen. Another thing is that you will have to prove that nobody else is available or that you've exhausted every possible option for someone else to come in. And you will only be paid for 40 hours tops, no matter how many hours your child deserves. And you will lose any type of respite because you've already had to prove that your child, that you can't find anybody else. And remember, finding somebody for respite is way different than finding continuous care. So I will be putting all of those points into a template for you to send to your legislator. And all you will need to do is send it out. You could call. You need to send it to your state legislator, your state senator, the governor, and post it on the town hall that I've already put in the comments. I don't see any questions. Let me just make sure that nobody asked a question. I don't see any questions. If you have any questions, I'll be on just for like a couple more minutes and I can answer them. I'm going to take this off the screen for now. No problem. Stephanie said, "Thanks for putting this information out there." I mean, honestly, it's my pleasure to do that, but I do know that many people don't know what's happening because it's not like they're not put. If it weren't for the ARC of Virginia, if it weren't for advocating for kids with Cheryl Poe, if it weren't for Moms in Motion, all of these advocacy organizations, Virginia Autism Foundation, nobody would know that this is happening. And most people don't know. They think it is permanent, which it is. It is permanent. And that's not to be dismissed because that's an amazing feat, right? I mean, in itself, that's an amazing feat to make that permanent. We're the leaders. We are one of the state leaders in that type of service because not all states have that. Minnesota has it. I know California does, but we're one of the few states that has that permanent now. And so that's a huge monumental feat for us. And to have CMS come in here and just shit all over it is just ridiculous. It is so unnecessary. Nobody asked for this. Who asked you to come? I don't know. But we do 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then if we can get a lot of Virginia families to step up and to let their legislators know, like, this has helped them, and these new regulations will be detrimental. It will place even more burdens on parents who are already, they're already stressed out, right? I mean, everywhere you go, there's a barrier here, obstacle there. Somebody saying no here, taking a year to get an AAC device. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The school's saying no. Everybody's saying no. So it's already, parents are already stressed out. And this is just adding to that stress. It's going to be detrimental. And the fact is that when you have a low paying job like this, finding somebody who is reliable, who is wonderful, it's hard. It's hard to do. And this allowance cuts out a lot of those issues for parents who are already at home doing the work. And so our legislators need to know about that. I'm just on rambling because unless you have a question, I'm just trying to see if anybody has any questions. And please do share with your networks because it is time sensitive. There's only 2 weeks before this just becomes what it is. And that will not be good for a lot of us. A lot of thousands of Virginia families who have benefited from this. All right, I don't see any questions. Let me look at the YouTube. I put this on YouTube and Facebook. Okay, well, I'm going to go. Thanks for hanging out with me. And, oh, Kelly. Hi. Can people without, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You can type it. Oh, I'll wait for you to type your comment, Kelly. Oh, absolutely. Yes. I think that, yes, absolutely. Anybody in Virginia, that's a great point, Kelly. Anybody in Virginia everybody in Virginia can do this. And because you all vote, and the legislators want to be voted back in, right? I mean, that is the thing. You all vote. This is what your values are. You're letting them know, hey, I don't have a disabled kids, but my friend has a disabled child, and this is trash. Like, I don't want to see my friend having to go through all of this stuff. I don't want to see Virginia families. I pay taxes, I vote, and these are my values. I want to see um, families in Virginia have whatever. You know what I mean? My words are not coming today, obviously. But yes, absolutely. Everybody can write their legislator, everybody can call their legislator and let them know what CMS is doing right now, and let them know this is not what we had in mind. Nobody had this in mind. Nobody talked about this. They just came out at the very end, at the very last minute. It's March 13th. I don't even think that the legislators I don't even know if they're still in session, but they're probably home now. And they come out and with these regs. And so anybody in Virginia can let their legislator know, hey, I'm not okay with this. This is not okay. My friend, my daughter, my whoever, it doesn't even matter if you know somebody or not. You know me. Anybody watching this knows me. And this will be detrimental for us. This will be really hard for us. And it will be hard for all Virginia families that are taking advantage of this allowance. So great question. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, I'll be back up. I'll post a link later on with a template for people to use to send to their legislator. Let's see. Is there a fact sheet available that I can share along with a template that unaffected residents can use when writing reps? A fact sheet of just like kind of the benefits of having parents as paid providers. The template I use will probably be, it will not, it will, let's see, okay. The template that I'm going to make will probably work for people that are unaffected by this decision. It's just, it really is going to be facts. It's not going to be some like heartfelt, oh, my family needs this or anything like that. It's just going to say, hey, this is what happened. It'll be educational to the legislator. Hey, this is historically, this is what's happened over the pandemic. This happened. This is how it has helped Virginia families. Thanks, Moats Place. This is how it has helped Virginia families. This is what. This is why those proposals are ridiculous. I'm not going to say ridiculous in the template, but I'll put that in there. And this is what I want to see. This is what we want to have happen. So it won't be like, oh, it will probably work for people who are not affected by this. It'll probably work for that too. I'm not a feely type of writer. It's just facts. It just is what it is. And the regulations are just ridiculous. The proposed regulations are ridiculous, and they are disrespectful. They are demeaning to parents and to the children. It's like they are more worried about somebody attempting Medicaid fraud on a very low paying job. They're more concerned about a fraction of people who may or may not attempt to commit Medicaid fraud. They're more concerned about that than the health, safety, and well-being of the children who are being cared for. And these are Virginia children. These are Virginia spouses. These are Virginia adults and children that are benefiting from this, and that they are trying to, I don't even know what they're trying to do. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. Any other questions? I'm here to answer any. I'll be on for a couple minutes. And I will say, like, there are a lot of advocacy organizations working on this, but they're also working on a lot of other stuff. And that includes like the DD waiver wait list. And they're working on a lot of stuff. And to me and a lot of families, this is like, this is the biggest impact that I've it's benefited my family and so many other families in like the biggest way over the pandemic. And to have that snatched, it will be detrimental to a lot of families. Most Place said, people don't see how acting locally really impacts the larger community as well. Thank you for bringing this forward. Yeah. I mean, I do want to say, like, this is a bipartisan issue. This is not like a Democrat, Republican, none of that. This was a bipartisan approval of the budget. I mean, this disability transcends politics when it comes to like red or blue or whatever. Like, there's none of that here, right? We all have disability, just affects everybody. I think 20% of the population is disabled in some way. So, you know, when our politicians, our legislators show that they care about families and about people with disabilities. I mean, when they show up for them, those people remember that. Those people vote for them again, because these things directly affect us, like on a day-to-day basis. These laws, these regulations, these barriers, these obstacles, these allowances, they all affect us daily. So, you know, I wish more politicians and legislators understood that. I wish more did, because a lot of us at a local level, we are voting for what is going to benefit us the most. What person is going to step up for us? What person is going to go to bat for us? I don't care what they call themselves, a Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care. As long as if they're stepping up for us, they get my vote. And that's how a lot of people, especially locally, will vote. So, sure. You're done? If there's any other questions, I'll stay on for like 3 more minutes. Move with me. Take you on a tour of the house. My little corner over here. I'm back in my little corner of the house. Gracious. Goodness. Okay. See, some people are still hanging on. I mean, if you have any questions or whatever, I'm here to answer them. But I think we went over most of it a couple of times. It just needs to be, we need to act quickly on this and definitely bring in people that are, who are unaffected by this. Bring them in and say, hey, can you write your legislators on this? Give them their legislators' email address and just organize in that way. Oh yeah, what I was saying is that like the ARC, Moms in Motion, all of those advocacy organizations advocating for kids, I mean, they really are, they have a lot to work on this year because they're trying to get more waiver slots opened up, rate increases for, I mean, they have a lot of stuff that they're working on. So this is just one piece of that, but for many families, it is the most direct piece. It's something that's going to affect them daily. So I really want to focus on this piece in particular and just organize our networks to make CMS redo these restrictions. I mean, honestly, it just should be it should be how it is now. Parents as pay providers, and they have to follow all the other regulations that every other attendant is required to follow, which makes sense. All right, well, I'm gonna log off then. Thanks for joining me, and feel free to share this. It'll be on my YouTube channel as well. So that will be a public link. This will be a public link if people have Facebook. But the one on my YouTube channel, oh, I guess I should put that up here. Hold on. It's not an Autism Mom on all social network, but I'll put it up here, HTTPS. That's my YouTube channel. It'll be up there. I think you have to go under live videos to see it in the channel. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out with me, and thank you for participating and getting your people to act on this. And I will be around this week, obviously, if you have any more questions. And I will drop the link to the template a little bit later today after I get it done. Okay, bye.